Battlefield is a franchise I hold near and dear to my heart, mainly because it carried me all the way through high school. Right about that time I got my first PC and Battlefield was the peak franchise to get into, whilst at the same time creating a YouTube channel so I could make Battlefield-centered content, which would be this one you're currently on, but it's seen a lot of changes since then. It has actually been 8 years since this channel has seen anything Battlefield related posted on it. In this video, follow me along this channel's creation and its subsequent abandonment at the same time, as most of the Battlefield community sat from afar and slowly watched this franchise die. We've got a lot of history to cover today, so sit back, relax, and let's get started.
What up, guys? What up, guys? Welcome, guys. What up, guys? What up, guys? I'm Faded Gaming. 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 I'm Faded Gaming.
What am I looking at?
EA boss Andrew Wilson has branded the troubled launch of Battlefield 4 as unacceptable, while also stressing developer DICE has learned a valuable lesson, so it shouldn't happen again.
Today I want to talk about netcode and perceived issues with netcode, things that may not technically be netcode, but rather bugs.
Here's the graph. Here it is. Graphical glitches. Here we go. System off.
Are you fucking serious?
DICE doesn't have the best track record when it comes to releasing stable games, and Battlefield 4 was a really good example. I would say every major Battlefield release has had stability issues. Battlefield 1 being the only game I remember that I'd be willing to give a pass. The game I remember best though being Battlefield 4, plagued with tons and tons of netcode issues being one of the biggest I remember. And the second biggest issue I remember are the crashes. I remember I had a really low-end AMD GPU and that thing was about to explode on launch.
What the?
With the overall bad reception of this game when it comes to stability, DICE did something that I haven't seen them do for any other games. They released the Battlefield 4 Community Test Environment. We'll just call it CTE for short. There are a few other games that have a system like this in place. The only other game that currently comes to mind is Rainbow Six Siege with their test servers, and that's exactly how the BF4 CTE worked. The purpose of the CTE was to tweak things on the fly and allow them to address issues that they were having. This also allowed certain players to test things early, such as certain maps. If I'm remembering correctly, you also had to be selected to be able to play in the test environment. With DICE making this move, this kind of showed players that they were trying to actually fix the game, with higher tick rate servers allowing for less and less netcode issues, and the crashing issue becoming a problem of the past. More and more players halfway through the game decided to start funneling back in. As most Battlefield releases go, they release, it's unstable, there's hardly any players and they all fall off, and usually at the end of the life cycle, the game gets good. Then part of the players that were once there in the beginning that hadn't quite refunded yet usually come back. But when doing that, you don't get the overall base that would have been there to start. And this isn't just an issue with DICE, modern day games now even do this. But at the time Battlefield 4 launched, this wasn't as common of an issue as it is today. So Battlefield 4 was initially touted as a complete failure when it launched, but it did come back in the end. I see a lot of nostalgia-based clips online, but people fail to remember the hard times that we went through to get there. And in the end, I would definitely say Battlefield 4 turned out to be an overall success. Mainly due to the actions of DICE, in my opinion, opening the community test environment, I would credit that to most of the reason why the game was saved. I would definitely say the releases from here on out, being Battlefield 5 and 2042 is a good example, as being some of the worst they could have possibly done. We'll start with Battlefield 5 first and get to 2042 later.
You know what I've had enough of, EA? Is your fucking bullshit!
That's what I've had enough of.
The date is May 23rd, 2018. Battlefield 5 releases its first reveal trailer to show to the world, and everyone is pissed because there's a woman. I honestly do remember back to this time and Twitter was on fire. The world is starting to notice at this point how politically charged EA is becoming, and it's starting to feed into all our games now. And this to the gaming world is completely unacceptable, and everyone at this point had had enough. To be fair, no one else likes anyone else's opinions forced down their throat, and it's obvious DICE was going to leave some people upset.
You could just see, it's so obvious what they try to do here, right? Like, the big emphasis in the first 25 seconds of this video is this girl's bionic arm.
But let's pause for a second. It's not the politically based things that are the problem, and they are quite obvious. It's the response from the devs at DICE. This just being one of the gems that was released on Reddit during the time. On top of that, devs are quoted saying, if you don't like women in Battlefield, then don't buy the game. I can safely say 99% of the gaming community is okay with women being in video games, but when you react like this leaves a super sour taste in players' mouths. And the game hasn't even released yet. On top of some weird pre-order bonuses, this game isn't looking so hot already. And coming hot off the heels of Battlefield 1, which was a pretty decent release, it's got a lot to compete with. On top of that, Black Ops 4 coming out in the same year, and that game was already looking pretty good. Even viewing the likes to dislike ratio in the reveal trailer should speak for itself. Okay, let's slow down a little bit. The reveal trailer was just the start of Battlefield 5's identity crisis, with it being really hard to tell if Battlefield 5 was trying to be historically accurate or just trying to be its own thing. And everyone was okay with this game trying to be its own thing, but it just seemed weird with all the forced narratives being put out front, mainly in the end just leaving people super confused. Leading off from the super confusing reveal trailer, we skip all the way up to launch. The game launched November 9th, 2018 and was met with a ton of launch bugs, as well as a very mixed reception and a low Metacritic score. This was the point I'd give the game a try and decide it's just not worth it, with them changing some small tiny elements such as TTK making a huge effect on the game. Once again, upsetting the already established fanbase. And to make it even better, they readjusted it again later down the life cycle to make people even more pissed and have to relearn it all over again. Not to mention, Battlefield 5 had a lot of promised modes such as Combined Arms. Combined Arms was a co-op styled mode that you could play with your friend, but on release, this was scaled back significantly from what people were shown in the press versions. Once again, say it with me now, leaving people upset. For the last big disappointment, we have Firestorm, which was briefly touched on earlier. Unlike most other games with battle royales that are free, this one was not, leaving a huge bottleneck on players. It wasn't necessarily received negatively on launch, it just didn't have enough players to support the game itself. And this mode was there for just a couple days and died very quickly, with Firestorm also receiving no significant updates since its launch. Battlefield 5 was looking pretty dead at this point. And the next move on DICE was to announce in June that they were cutting support for the Battlefield 5 game. I guess DICE at this point knew when they should have cut support and jumped ship, but it's just unfortunate because with this game having enough support, it actually could have been super good. And don't get me wrong, the final game is very good, seeing as it is still retaining players to this day. But DICE just really fumbled the ball on this game overall. But surely DICE learned from their mistakes from Battlefield 5, right? That's what everyone was thinking moving into the next release of Battlefield. And oh boy, were we wrong. Welcome to Battlefield 2042. As I'm minding my own business playing games in August, I receive an email. Come to find out, I've been invited to the confidential Battlefield 2042 playtesting. Now don't get me wrong, I was excited. This would have been my 2015 YouTube childhood dream. I hop in queue and get signed up. And man, I went to bed so hyped that night, ready to play this game when it came out. One thing 2042 did better than Battlefield 5 was its marketing, in my opinion. This game had me thoroughly hyped. The game wasn't drowned out with all the surrounding controversy, which allowed more people to just focus on the game. Jumping 2 weeks, the playtests are coming up. I've got the game preloaded and ready to go for the next day. They had specific set hours for this so you can only play at certain times of the day. This day so happened to be super early in the morning. I boot up the game and I'm super excited and ready to play, and I hop into one of the most disappointing gaming experiences of my life. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show any of the footage I have because I don't want to get banned, but just trust me when I say that this game was awful. Locked at 30 FPS with graphics forced all the way to low, even at points dipping under 30 FPS. We were all forced on the map Orbital, which is a far more barren version of what we have today. Just trust me when I say that this playtest was god-awful. And I definitely wasn't the only person with those thoughts, with a lot of leaking footage of the playtest online. I would definitely say this did a number on Battlefield. With everyone's hype dashed before launch, everyone was thinking surely this game's gonna get delayed. And thankfully it did, because if that version came out, it would have been even worse than what we already got. The game was only delayed a month, but that really didn't do a whole lot, it seemed. Because when the game came around to launch, it was still a buggy, broken mess. And if you want to talk about a game with an identity crisis, 2042 is a perfect example. Honestly, even worse than Battlefield 5. It didn't know if it wanted to be a class-based shooter, removing that entirely, or a hero-based shooter like Apex Legends, with a very weird monetization model with getting a battle pass and a new hero every season. Similar to their other games in the franchise, but it just did not fit the Battlefield aesthetic, feeling just super forced and like a complete cash grab. If it was possible to take Battlefield 5 and remove even more life from it, they were very successful, with 2 other modes in addition being Hazard Zone and Portal, that both unfortunately felt really half-baked. Hazard Zone was just dead on arrival. I only played that mode 2 times, and didn't really even understand what the objective was. Portal, on the other hand, had way more thought put into it, just not enough content. But this overall was just for the launch. Where does the game sit at today? Unlike Battlefield Hardline, EA has not abandoned this one yet, but it is still a far cry from what our Battlefield games used to be. They've rebalanced majority of the launch maps, lazily introduced some of the Portal guns into the main game, while still also adding some new ones. Plus, adding some polish to the overall gameplay and some weapon balance from launch, turning into some pretty decent growth for the existing player base. But overall, this game does not resemble a Battlefield game at all. The only thing that's been touched up is the main wing of the game, with Portal basically being left abandoned. Definitely catering to a new subset of players, but all the old ones have kind of been pushed out. Just look at all the old YouTubers you used to once know, they have all switched away from Battlefield. I can definitely see the appeal to modern day players enjoying this, but this is just not for me. Unfortunately, this game fell victim to the live service format, which has just killed the overall feel of the game, feeling like it was created for a reason to just monetize and not actually play as a game. I wish this game the best success, but it definitely does not cater to any of the past player base. DICE, I hope you're happy with what you created, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna stick with what I enjoy.